Alright, so this is a look at a calendar that I designed probably on the order of a dozen years ago based on local weather in the Sonoran Desert and um, looking at pretty closely um, various versions of Odam calendrical systems. So I took into account Akimal Odam by Phoenix. I took into account Thornlaw Odam down around Tucson and Cells, and even a little bit of Hirchad um, oral history, making this up. And they kind of like by region, they sort of disagreed on the names of months, or depending on like if it was a sort of like a historic telling, they might change the name of the month based on what happened that specific year during that month, something like that. And as far as like preserving oral history, that seems like a brilliant idea to me. I think that's a good idea. But I kind of wanted to sort of take that and um, sort of pair it with ideas from like the Hebrew calendar, other lunisolar calendars like that. But also retain a lot of consistency with the weather patterns in Arizona and some of this historic tradition here. So the names of all of the months are in Adam, um, and the year starts kind of at the classical Adam start of the year, the um, when the saguaro fruit, the baidech, um, ripen. Right. So kind of what I did is I took solar cues as sort of the triggers for like the where months are gonna land, and like the Hebrew calendar, I add in intercalary months, basically for leap years. But depending on where solstice and equinoxes occur, then that's what triggers the addition of an intercalary month, right? So you're never, there are four with different names, but in any one year, only one will occur. And in most years, none will occur, right? Most years, you don't even get an intercalary month. But when it's appropriate in order to realign, um, so you make sure that Harshan Yibak Marshad gets the June solstice, and Warshagakidak Marshad gets the September equinox. You might have to drop in Ibabak Marshad between them, and it goes like right in the middle, just to make things as even as possible, right? So Jokyapik Marshad will always immediately follow Harshan Yibak Marshad, and Shopar Arshipik Marshad will always immediately precede Warshagakidak Marshad. Um, and then the one after that will always be our Drupik Marshad. Um, and if you're in a year that does have Ibabak Marshad, you're not going to get Wehanik Marshad or Komak Marshad or Kok Marshad. You're not going to get any of those other three. You're only going to get that one. And in a subsequent year, you might get Komak Marshad and none of the other three. It depends on how the the lunar cycles sort of move through the year, right? And then these end up breaking down into our four basic seasons that we experience in the Sonoran Desert, which are not spring, summer, autumn, and winter, but starting with Harshan Yibak Marshad, almost like to the day, almost every single year. It's amazing. Um, we have a monsoon season, which lasts very solidly about 3 months. We tend to get lots of rain for right around 2.5 to 3 months. So this ends up being pretty much perfect. And then following that, we get sort of a dry period. It's still quite warm. We a lot of times we'll have temperatures easily into the 90s and the low hundreds, and the evening temperatures will come down to maybe by the end of it. So like I think right now we're in because it's November when I'm. Let's see. Let me actually look here. Yeah, it's we're in right now, and it's pleasantly cool. It'll reach 80s, maybe pushing 90 in the heat of the day, and then in the evening it'll come down around 50 or so. It's quite nice. It's beautiful. And then the next season that comes after this, which starts in the lunar cycle with the December solstice, is that's going to be the cold season, where we're kind of subject to experiencing freezes, though it's usually not real hard freezes. Like we might get temperatures down to 27, 25, just a little below freezing. And that's going to be the coldest part of the day. Like the very coldest, right before sunrise kind of time. So like throughout the night, it's going to be probably in the 30s, maybe even the very low 40s, depending on what's going on. And occasionally we'll get a touch of snow, but we don't really tend to get snow most years. And then following this, starting with the lunar cycle that includes March equinox, we get the major dry season. And these names they're kind of my names, minor dry season, major dry season especially, but it really describes what's going on. So in the minor dry season, which is sort of wrapping up right now for us, there's a little bit of rain. Very little, though. But we're coming off of the monsoon season, so a lot of areas will be able to hold on to residual moisture in the ground. So you're still going to see lots of plants, lots of bugs, things like that in the minor dry season. Whereas in the major dry season, it's extremely dry, especially by the end of it. So by May, yeah, it's very very dry, and it's very hard for plants to survive. This is pretty much the time of the year that makes it hard for gardeners, people who are used to being able to plant things that would grow just fine in other climates. This is the time of year where you lose it, right? Because coming right up to the beginning of monsoon season, what's going to happen is you're going to get like a straight month and a half with no rain, and your temperatures in the middle of the day are going to be pushing 115, 120 pretty regularly. So that's the kind of stuff that just destroys plants. So let's take a look at how I set this up in a nice presentable format, that like printable for this current year. So when I made this up, it was the monsoon season was just starting. It was somewhere in this maybe first or second week of Harishan Yubak Mashat, I think, if I recall correctly. It was right around this time here. So, and I have English translations here, and I aligned it so that the weekends kind of get highlighted, so it lines up with your conventional calendar. So you can just kind of like pick off like what is today? Today is November 11th. Yeah, so we're right here. So we should have just had the first quarter moon today. I mean, tonight it should look pretty much like that little picture right there. So the way this is set up is this is the period between the new moon and the first quarter. This is the period between the first quarter and the full moon. And then this is the period between the full moon and the last quarter. And this is between the last quarter and the next full moon, or the next new moon, sorry. So they're all set up this way. And if you notice, a lot of times there's 7 days here. And I'm pretty confident that this is actually where our 7-day week comes from, taking a solar or lunar month and quartering it like this. And then on average, you get 3 7-day weeks and 1 8-day week. That's pretty much what happens on average. Some months are strange. You'll get some 6-day weeks every once in a while, and maybe a bunch of 8-day weeks. Like this one is a little bit odd, and that happens. But on average, you're hitting 7 most of the time. All right. So here, Haishanyi back, Marshad. That's when the saguaros are fruiting, and this will actually be right before the big rains come. But this is the period that will include. What was it? Summer solstice. So that's marked right there with that little symbol, that little sun symbol. And then we'll have a couple months after this. Jokiepik Marshad is the rainy month. You're going to get your biggest rains pretty much every single year. It's extremely reliable. They're going to come here. And then what happens is the rain and wind is so intense during this period that it can be difficult to plant, especially plants from Eurasia. They're not going to tolerate this very well. Native plants you can totally plant in this period. That's perfectly fine. But things like beans and wheat and stuff like that, corn. Well, corn, I've never had good luck with corn. But, things like that, plants like that. It's difficult to plant them here because they tend to just kind of get washed away. And because they'll be like the first sprouts of the year, all kinds of animals will come and just eat them right as they sprout out. So this period is for like traditional crops, not the best time to plant. This is a much better time to plant. But because we're starting to come into the next few months are going to be starting to get colder. You kind of got to be quick, and you got to choose plants that are going to generate a yield fairly quickly. Yeah, so that's what's happening there. In the minor dry season, we get Warshagak. So this is because the rains have kind of stopped at this point. The wild grasses that might be occurring, tend to dry out by the end of this month, and you get just fields of like golden grass all over the place. And then after this period, we get Arjul Pikmashet. So this tends to be a little bit rainy, and it's usually October is roughly what this month is, and this one is roughly September. And it tends to be a little bit rainy, but it's nothing like a monsoon. It does throw people, though, a lot of times. They'll be like, oh, I thought the monsoons were over. But one of the things is, with the monsoons, the wind direction changes. So most of the year, our wind comes from the west. But during monsoon, it comes from the east. And somewhere in this period here, the wind will change back, coming from the west predominantly. Or it might be kind of like random for a few weeks, where it just kind of like comes from one direction one day, the next direction, or you might even just be standing out there and you feel the wind direction just changes. It's like suddenly like around you. But predominantly the rain here is going to be coming from the west, and that's going to persist for the rest of the year. Um, Pleasantly cool month. This is where we're at right now, and I this is one of my favorite times of year. It's beautiful because I don't have to run air conditioner. I don't have to run a heater. I leave the windows open all night long just to kind of let the cool air in, and it gets a little chilly early in the morning, but it, the sun is powerful. It does its thing very well, so it warms up pretty quickly, and it's not that bad. You're in the 60s inside the house with all the windows open, so it's quite nice. It's quite nice. So pleasantly cool month is a very good description of that. The next season, which is going to be coming up in this usually aligns with December very well. Here it aligns with it almost perfectly. It ends on the last day of it is going to be January 1st, and it starts on December 4th. So this is almost exactly December this year. So here this is so that's like the big cold month, right? Go is big, and this is like coldness. So like the great coldness month, something like that. Very cold month. It's a nice English translation for that. Not a whole lot happens here. It just it's just kind of when the cold comes. This is really about it. But here we have the winter solstice. Always going to fall within this month at some point. The next one after this is Kakemtakmarshad. So this is named after the fact that wild animals like deer and rabbits and whatever, at this point in the year, they've gone a while, because pretty much without food, because pretty much this period sort of like killed everything back, right? There's no more grasses and stuff like that. So by this point, the animals are, yeah, they're looking for food pretty vigorously, and they've burned off a lot of their body fat. Here, Uhualik Marshad. This is um, Rutting Month, or yeah, the month where like deer are, the month where deer are rutting. They're in rut. They're working on making babies. Um, this is usually aligns very closely with February, and actually a lot of times this is where we get our coldest days of the year, but they'll be interspersed with warm days. So here it's just consistently cold, but here we're going to get colder days, but they're going to be mixed in with very pleasant, nice, warm days. And this is where I've had a lot of trouble trying to start growing crops in this time, because you'll have several beautiful days, just gorgeous, and something that you planted will start sprouting, and then you'll get a freeze the next day. This is where you get some wild weather here, and it's in the direction of freezes, right? And then the major dry season starts over here. So this is March, very almost perfectly this time. Yeah, from March 2nd to the 30th. So this captures March almost perfectly this year. And this one will include the spring equinox. And here, this is kind of, you get a little bit of rain, and the temperatures are very nice. It's very similar to this time of year. Um, I'll probably start opening windows in the night in Uhulik Marshat, and throughout March, throughout Jedek Marshad, I'll tend to keep them open. And I'm not going to start needing air conditioning at all until maybe Wam Marshad. So here, this is going to coincide with kind of the standard concept of spring for the most part. A lot of your wildflowers will bloom here, and you get, it's not a lot of rain, but you might have a couple days with some decent rain here and there, and it will get the grass to grow and the the wildflowers to bloom and things like that. But because it wasn't big rains, the next month stuff is going to start dying back. That's what this is in reference to, La Marcha. Um, and here the temperatures kind of just continue warming a little bit, but it's still quite pleasant. You might be getting into uh, maybe the low 90s towards the end of this month here. The next one, Wehokudakumasha? Yeah. Wehokudakumasha. Um, this is kind of where things start getting crazy towards the end of May. Things start getting painfully hot. And this is where so in this period here, the mesquite trees have flowered and like they've bloomed, and here you're starting to get little baby mesquite pods. They look like little tiny sticks. They're skinny. This means like sticks. I'm not entirely sure how to translate this really, but it's something along those lines. Like the English sense of this is something like that, like little skinny little stick beans, something like that. Um, yeah, this is where it starts getting hot, and then we come back around to the next monsoon season, Harshan Yubak Marsha, which will again include summer solstice, and then it carries on. And let's see, this one, I don't think we have any intercalary months up to this point. But yeah, so that's the gist of it. That's it works quite nicely. Just for reference, again, this is a full list of the months with the intercalaries in there. So, and I make this by hand. I'll actually go around, when I'm starting to reach the end of the thing, I'll just go to like NASA's lunar data and just plop in and calibrate, because they'll give it in UTC, so I'll just calibrate it for Arizona time. So sometimes the days will switch, um, you know, and it's funny because like my Wiccan friends will celebrate the new moon on the day where it hit on UTC. So like in England, the new moon might have been on 6/9 or 6/11 or something, but because of the time shift, the time difference between here and there, it wasn't Thursday or it wasn't Friday yet. Whatever the day is. So it'll, for us locally, it's actually sometimes a different day. So I actually will go through and carefully pick that out. And for some reason, I don't know, there's some formatting errors down here, but whatever. That's why I went and I put it in LibreOffice and then turned it into like a Libre Calc. So this is like a spreadsheet originally, and then just turn it into a PDF. So then I know for sure what I'm going to print out if I want to print it out. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully somebody found that interesting.